journalism. Of course, we have amazing speakers and moderators, but I'm going to hand over the microphone virtually to the moderator soon. So
I grab it.
to be speaking. Okay, so our first speaker is from Liberia, Professor Euria Togar, Assistant Professor and Chairman, Department of Communication and Media Studies, University of Liberia. And then the second speaker is from Ghana, Professor Audrey, Associate Professor of the Department of Communication Studies and Dean of the School of Information and Communication Studies, University of Ghana. The third speaker for today is from Sierra Leone, and we are speaking to Dr. James. He is the head of Mass Communication Department, University of Sierra Leone. And last but not the least is from Gambia, and we'll be speaking with Dr. Wumi Morolake Adekunie, Dean of School of Journalism and Digital Media of the University of Gambia. These will be our speakers for today, but permit me to welcome our moderator. Some of you know him as Dapo Olorunyomi. In Nigeria, he's an uncle to everyone, and he's popularly known in Africa and around the world as the godfather of online journalism. Please welcome Mr. Dapo Oloriyami, the Executive Director of Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism. Please put your hands together for them.
Good. Thank you so very much, Stephanie. And I'd like to say good morning to everyone. And thank you to our five-star panelists. I consider myself extremely privileged that I've been moderating this session. These are perhaps the smartest people, in our region, and I think it's also quite comforting that we are doing a West Africa session of this event, and we have a good representation from all the English language world of the region. So thank you, Sora, for already introducing them, and that helps matters. And when you have eggheads like these, you really want to work carefully. And I will say that time might be a major challenge for us on a day like this, but I'll be counting on the indulgence of my panelists to try to cut it to chase at every point so that we can make inputs. So I think we have an unwelcome guest here. Is it a quacking dog or something? Okay. So I think we want to start from that area of study that give materiality and meaning to the profession itself. And on the panel here, we have journalism teachers, and some of them have also practiced, which really brings a variety and breadth, the kind that we are looking for. I'm not going to waste time. I will dive in straight and ask that if Professor Gadzekpo, and if you don't mind, I'll use first name for you guys. If Audrey will help open the floor by helping to give meaning and definition to what we generally will call journalistic ethics, and what is the peculiar representation that this has in Ghana today. Audrey, and that could be your dog also barking,
Thank you very much. I've taken the dogs to some other parts of the house.
Okay.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the panel. It's always a pleasure to be having a conversation on what is such an important topic. I wanted, though, to start just to acknowledge that this year's Nobel Peace Prize has just been awarded to two journalists, Philippines, Maria Risa, and Russia's Dmitry Muratov. And what struck me was the fact that it's the first time in more than 80 years, I believe. And the Nobel Committee explained that it was a way to highlight the importance of upholding, protecting, as well as defending freedom of expression. And for those of us who've been following developments in investigative journalism, especially, we see that Risa's name would have been very familiar, and amongst other accolades in the world of investigative journalism, she co-founded Rappler, which is a digital media platform for investigative journalism. And I just thought it would be a good starting point to point that out, and to also note that what this affirms is the importance of investigative journalism in bringing an awareness and societal and information reform on so many issues. But it also does make us think about investigative journalism, or at least me on the continent, the challenges, the ability to attract investigative journalists, the lack of investment, the commitment on the part of media owners, etc., etc. So I just wanted to put that on the table. I'm sorry, but I thought it'd be a good starting point. But also, coming back to your issue, and in fact, in thinking about this, I thought, well, maybe I should focus on an investigative journalist in Ghana, well known in Africa, as a case study of how he plies his trade and the trade-offs he has to make in between serving the public interest and sticking to the ethical canons of the profession. And we know that journalism, first and foremost, is a profession of verification. Truth lies at the heart of journalism practice. But we also have other ethical considerations, for example, objectivity, balance, fairness, independence from authority, but also from other segments of society, so that you can apply your trade properly. Transparency, openness, so your transparency of methods, and other canons. Fairness, I think I already said that. How we use digital media so that you do not infringe on the privacy of people is also an ethical issue that arises. And I think these are just examples of some of the conundrums that investigative journalists face in doing their work, that I hope our conversation this morning will begin to unpack. So for now, I will step down and hopefully we can come back to some of these issues in a practical manner. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I think then we can, and thank you so much for bringing in the very important issue of the recognition that the Nobel Committee had given to journalism this year. Definitely that gives a wind to all the work, important work that many of us in the room and outside, certainly in Africa, are doing at a time like this. And that gives a segue to, of course, Sierra Leone, where indeed, from a West African perspective, the media actually started in 1801. And I wonder if Willette will help walk us through what today, if you have to give a report card for us, how do you think the journalistic community in Sierra Leone are understanding the meaning and the shifting contexts of ethics in their profession? Did we lose Willette? Okay, well, okay. And I think we all understand the dubious nature of internet connectivity in the sub-region. And I'll come back to her, hoping that she'll be able to connect very soon. And with that, I would like to ask.
You called me? Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what was it that you asked? Because I was off, I didn't hear the question.
Okay. So I was asking that if you could just help us understand how journalists in Sierra Leone today understand the meaning and the context of ethics in their work.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for this opportunity, and I want to apologize for my voice. You know, it's a bit hoarse, but I think you all can hear me. In Sierra Leone, we have the Independent Media Commission. It's a regulatory body. It was set up by the government, and the Independent Media Commission Act is the act that is there to regulate the media profession in Sierra Leone, to register and regulate media profession. And that act provides for us to have a code of practice in Sierra Leone. And of course, you know, over time, we've been having problems with journalists adhering to ethical codes, and we've been having unprofessionalism in the media in Sierra Leone. But at this moment, the Independent Media Commission have worked extensively, extensively on the act and on the provision, providing the code, and journalists have an understanding that there is a code. They know that there is a code, and they are trying, the Independent Media Commission is trying to ensure that the code is has the kind of visibility that it should have, and that journalists abide by the contents of the code. About 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I've forgotten, I did a research, and we noticed that in Sierra Leone, we have 3 kinds of journalists. We have those who know the code, and they do all that they can to abide by the codes of the profession. And you have those who do not know the code, they do not know the provisions of the code, and so flout them, you know. And then you have those who know the codes and ethics of the profession and flout them anyway. I could remember there was a situation, I think in 2007, I've forgotten the year now. A president came to Sierra Leone and he said that he had donated. Am I still on?
You are indeed, go ahead.
Yes, the president came to Sierra Leone and he talked about the donation that he made to the president of Sierra Leone. And he donated rice, and they reported the newsroom, and he wrote the story. After writing the story, he presented it to the editor. The editor looked at the story and he said, no, this is not what, it's not what the man said, the president said. He said that he donated this to the president of Sierra Leone and this amount of rice. And the reporter said, no, the president didn't say that. He said blah, blah, blah. I said, no, the president said this. He said, but, Mr. Editor, you weren't there, I was there. The editor said, no, this was what he said. And he ended up publishing what he thought, what he was insisting that the visiting president said. And at the end of the day, they had problems, and they asked the newspaper to retract. And that issue caused a lot of problem in Sierra Leone. And at the end of the day, the government in power was taken out. We saw a new government coming in because that issue caused embarrassment for the government. and caused the government had bad press at the end of the day. So these are some of the things that we see happening in Sierra Leone, that we have journalists who know the codes and ethics of the profession, and they are at the senior cadre, of journalism in Sierra Leone. They do not abide by the codes and ethics of the profession. You have those who know the codes and ethics and try to abide by them. And then you have those who do not know, and they're just blank. They don't know, so they don't do anything. So, I mean, basically, I think for now, this is what I will just give you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, and that's been helpful. I think our panelists are really doing well with time, obviously, because when we have 4 great panelists, and we really have to manage with time. But thank you very much. So we'll take a quick trip now to Liberia and ask if Professor Togar will help us in as tight as 5 minutes, give a general landscape of how we can understand ethics in the media, or if you like, journalistic ethics in Liberia today.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Well, let me begin by first thanking the organizers of this conference, and it's such a privilege and honor to be a part of it. Forgive my voice as well. It's early morning here, and I was hit by cold, so I'll try the best I can. Well, but yes, I think Willette and Audrey have both laid the platform, and I'm going to try as much as possible not to be repetitive, but I will just try to be practical and provide a context. Yeah, I think to be brutally honest, I think the media in Liberia seriously challenged right now with respect to ethics. The practice, in my view, in Liberia here has been hijacked by partisan journalism. And that is not to say that there are not good journalists around and there are not independent media here, but I think overwhelmingly, in our view, the media is challenged in terms of ethics. And I think there are a couple of reasons why that is the case, why media independence is so threatened now in Liberia, which is one of the ethics or codes of the media, that the media must act independently. And I take that very seriously, because without independence, then there is no media in reality. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because if you look at I always love to refer to this quote from George Orwell, the British writer, who says, "Journalism is printing what someone else does not want printed." And if you look at that quote in the context of independence, what it means basically is that the journalist must be independent. He must be truthful. He must seek the truth and report it. But I think in Liberia today, that is becoming a challenge. Again, largely because the media has been infiltrated. I think, for example, media ownership in Liberia now revolves around politicians, people with political interest. Ownership is no longer in the hands of professional media persons, but politicians and people seeking state power, or people aligned to political parties and political individuals. A second factor here that's affecting media independence in Liberia is the fact that the media is not well supported. I think the media itself has not done well for itself in terms of adjusting in these contemporary times, coming up with creative business models to undercut some of these political influences. So politicians control the media because politicians fund the media. I'll give you an example. Very recently, I was at a training organized by Internews, and the journalist said, this politician would just walk into the studio while the news is on, and he will and they will have to literally kill the microphones because he will be screaming and shouting because why they have to carry a certain story, and he would threaten that he would shut the station down. And even though they knew that they were right, that they had checked all of their facts and everything, but they will have to later on go back to this politician's house and beg him to open the station. And why were they doing that? It's because they saw the station as a means of survival. If the station was shut down, then their families will suffer. And so, so media independence in Liberia is under threat. Again, I don't say this to mean that there are no independent or no, there are very good journalists here who are striving to be professional. But I think politics has dominated the media landscape. And so media independence for me, I think as one of the very important codes is challenged here in Liberia. Before I close, we recently did a survey. That report is yet to be published, of course. We have found from that study that public trust in the media is even declining. So a lot of people now are trusting in social media, and that is unfortunate, of course. I'm sure we'll talk about social media later on in the discourse. But if people are kind of moving to social media to get news and information, then of course, then we're in trouble. And the reason is because people think that every journalist, and that is a perception, and every journalist is allowed to some political party. They're not independent anymore. And so I take that very seriously. So yeah, I'd like to stop there. We can continue the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for just a very effective landscaping, and so that then leaves us to move straight to the Gambia, where Dr. Morolake Adekunie will then help give a representation of this reality in today's Gambian journalism.
Yes, good morning, members of the panel and the moderator. I want to say thank you for inviting me to be part of the discussion this morning. Our situation in the Gambia is actually very peculiar. As we all are aware, the Gambia was under a dictatorship for 22 years until 2016 when we got out of the dictatorship. But the problem that we have in the Gambia is that the press can still not, the media generally, the media confraternity cannot express their sense of freedom yet. So we have this self-imposed constraints really on the expression, and you know that a journalist has a duty to sincerely give news content in a very comprehensive sense to the public. But this, we have not yet started to witness this a lot in the Gambia. But there are still, apart from that, there are other factors when it comes to journalistic ethics in the Gambia. The Gambia as a society is just like one big family, and a lot of people have a blood ties with different people. And when it comes to reporting, maybe especially on public servants who are not doing well, you discover that a lot of people exercise restraints in actually giving factual content. They would rather not talk about whatever is going on, especially with regards to corruption. We see people being, maybe you can say that they are prejudiced in a way because somebody is related to them, and they are not really willing to give any damaging or whatever they consider as an indictment of the personality involved. That is it. And then another thing is that the journalists, largely, most of the journalists in the Gambia are not trained. They are not professionals in a sense, because the school of journalism in the Gambia is relatively young, and people have not been trained. So people just think that what it means to be a journalist is just to take up your pen and write. Actually, I mean, we want us to acknowledge the fact that in the colonial days, there were good journalists who distinguished themselves in the Gambia. But with what we have now, people establishing their own media houses and employing maybe school certificate graduates, we see a lot of unskilled people in the profession of journalism. And the issue of biases too are there. Part of these biases, as I've said, can be as a result of family ties. Then also some of the biases are as a result of maybe religious factors or political affiliations. For instance, we have some people who are private media owners, either television or radio and the newspapers. They have their political affiliations, as we all know, and the reporters cannot be free, to report because they have to think of the interest of people who own these. And then there was a recent incident in the Gambia of a youth group that bought a slot from a radio station to promote. I mean, just they are political. They talk about ongoing events in the society. And now you can imagine a situation where they are asked to submit their contents before they can go on air, because they believe that they are becoming, they perceive them as becoming too radical, being activists. So they said that they should submit their contents, And when you have that kind of situation, that's curbing freedom of speech. Then another journalist was invited to speak on a public affairs forum. And while he was speaking, he started receiving a lot of text messages, politicians, everything. They're telling him that, oh, you have to tone down your because it was actually a government-owned media. So telling him he had to tone down the conversation because it was too confrontational. They believe that it was going too much against the government. So we have this kind of situation, and then in a situation where we don't really have people that are skilled, is really very challenging because we are trying to encourage people to exercise freedom of free speech, to try to practice investigative journalism. Then we have another person who reported on the government too. I mean, this is something that he told me himself. He reported on the government and his uncles, everybody coming, and because he actually belongs to the same ethnic group with the president. So a lot of people are telling him that, oh, no, you shouldn't have done that.
Okay, Dr. Adekunie, so let's take a quick sweep. So we'll come back, but thank you so much, at least, for painting the landscape at that point. So now we have a general view of what it looks like in more or less in the 5 countries. But I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be the Nigerian element here, but most of what you guys are saying also kind of gives a view of the Nigerian situation. I'm going to ask you to take just a minute, if you can, please, to see what is specific that has happened. And I know that Professor Togar already opened that channel. What is specific with regards to the digital transition? How has this affected the reality of ethics in each of your countries?
Okay.
Yes.
Should I go first?
Oh, yes, please, Audrey. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think the digital age has been a really exciting one. It's a double-edged sword, as we both know. I think it has allowed a lot of our journalists to take advantage of tools that are cheaper than in the past to do their work, particularly investigative journalists. So investigative journalists now can use their phones to surreptitiously record wrongdoing. There are hidden cameras, which are digital tools, sometimes even in the form of a pen or whatever. The digital revolution also allows journalists to share more quickly with one another, and I think to connect with other journalists doing similar work. But it also then raises a lot of ethical issues about how to be upfront in your journalism. Although I sort of think we need to problematize the problem, because it allows for undercover journalism much more easily. And we have to ask ourselves, in the context of journalism practice in Africa, how should undercover journalism look like? Is
being a blessing to some extent and a cost to another extent, because now we have people go on the internet, journalists go on the internet to do research. They have access to information. A lot of information is available on the internet. They can go there and use it. And we see journalists using tools now, using their phones to do, journalism and all of those things, like Audrey said. But I will just go on to state some of the disadvantages for us in Sierra Leone. Now you see a lot of copying and pasting. You go to the news, the method and all of those spots, you see they just lift it from the internet and paste it. And I think that's bad for journalism in Sierra Leone. It's not good for journalism anywhere in the world. And you also look at the misinformation taking place, and the way now people can just use technology to just add, just cut somebody's speech and edit, and then he edits, and say you said what you did not said. That is actually frightening, because it's dangerous, and you begin to wonder that if people are to be apprehended for an audio tape that was published by a journalist, that you did not say. They said you said something that you did not say, and that is really frightening. And we also have to contend with malinformation and the disinformation as well in Sierra Leone. And something happened about 2 days ago. A journalist called me up to say, I want to profile you. And I said, okay, yeah, fine, you can meet me in my office and then we'll have a chat. And she said, I can't come now. I can't come. Can I just have your profile? Just send me a write-up of yourself and blah, 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 blah. So I had to, take her through what she was supposed to do, because I knew she didn't understand what she was saying. So I, categorically stated how she was supposed to go about it. But I think that fell on deaf ears. She didn't even listen to me. The next I could see was somebody sent me a link to a profile that had been done. And when you go through the profile, you see that there was something I wrote about myself that she copied and pasted. And there are other sentences within the write-up about some achievements that I made that I did not make, and quoting some years that are wrong. So these are some of the things that we have to contend with in journalism in Sierra Leone, with the digital, because with the digital age, because now you go on the internet, you just type Willette James, everything will come up on Willette James, all the things that I have done. So they just copy and just paste. So these are some of the things we have to contend with. I think I should stop. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Yeah. And since you already opened the pathway Professor Togar, I wonder if you want to explore in a very narrow sense what the digital age has then meant for independence and the new business models that you were trying to explore. If you can do that in 1-2 minutes, that will help. Yeah.
Well, I think the emergence of digital technology has kind of helped, offers a lot of opportunities. Audrey talked about it. Same with again, I think journalists here are still struggling to catch up with the technology, and part of the reasons would be that they're not too trained in the use of the technology, because the thing about digital technology, and technology for that matter, is that people must be trained in the use of it. Other than that, you have some issues. Of course, then you have the issues of ethics that surrounds it, because digital media puts so much power in the hands of people. Not to talk about journalists. Now, journalists can get information very fast and quickly, and they also can share and disseminate that. And I think one of the challenges that comes with that is this issue of speed over accuracy, because now people can get contents out there very fast and quickly compared to pre-digital age. This desire to break the news, to get it out there, has kind of taken over concerns for accuracy. Audrey talked about the use of digital technology for secret recordings or something like that. Yeah, so journalists, yeah, I think investigative journalism or investigative journalists can also work almost in the same way that detectives will work. But then even detectives they work within the framework of law, and journalists, because they are journalists, are not exempted from privacy laws and so forth. So care has to be taken there. But again, with respect to Liberia, I think the biggest challenge is training, especially with the fact that journalists, like anybody else who uses the internet and other digital media, are exposed to misleading information. How do you decipher truth from falsehood is a challenge for even journalists themselves. And I think a lot of training need to go on in there. So it's a new territory that everyone, including journalists, are kind of walking into. But yes, I think we need more training. Our journalists still lack training. I share the thoughts with my sister there in where is that? They said her name Alagwe. She talked about, yes. So yeah, the same thing. Liberia here, you have a lot of rookie journalists, people from high school straight into journalism, and that's because media entities do not want to hire people who are properly trained, because they think they do not have the money to pay them. So training in digital media is needed here very, very seriously, and it's something that we're beginning to think about even at the university. So we also have even introduced, because of that, we've introduced digital media literacy. In the coming semester, we've introduced it into our curriculum, because we think journalists need training in that. Unless they're trained, I think it's going to get even more dangerous for all of us.
Okay, thank you so very much. And I'll ask Dr. Adekunie if you can then wrap up that part of the whole segment, so that we then get into more specific issues that you guys have raised, and before we go to the audience. Do you like to put in a word or two on the
yes, so there are advantages and disadvantages of the digitalization in the Gambia. When we talk of citizen journalism, I think we can say that we have made a lot of gains in that area, but at the same time, there is this resultant information disorder, because a lot of people, they spread fake content and try to malign the personality of the others and all that, and the rest of it. Then at the same time, there is another negative impact of this. We have even the traditional media practitioners now taking news content from online sites, and just like the person from the professor from Sierra Leone said, cut and paste. So you just see people, if I'm talking of media practitioners, from the traditional news media, doing this, and then they mislead people generally. And another effect is that they've turned the online platforms into a battleground for opposing political parties. So it's really very divisive, and the police at times in the Gambia have had to intervene in this. So this is just what I can say about what is happening now in the Gambia.
Okay. Thank you so very much. Obviously, a lot of issues have been raised. As journalists, we trained to be accurate first and foremost, to tell the truth. But in a world of anarchy, investigative journalism can be a very powerful tool to fight corruption, human rights abuses, and all that. But Audrey has raised a very important point, which I also want to ask all of you to comment on, is the whole question of, how do we balance truth-telling, being accurate, respect for the privacy of the individuals, while we're using methods in themselves that at best call to accountability of those methods. So things like what she has associated now with the great journalist in Ghana, Anas, who uses the undercover method, So does this represent lack of accountability on our part? How do we want to promote accountability without ourselves being effectively accountable? My sense is that Audrey weighs in favor of the method with a proviso. If you go all over in Nigeria and Ghana, I know that everybody wants to be a kind of announced person. I know there's a big debate in Nigeria now about, the whole ethical value and meaning of undercover reporting. Can you all just help us make some statements on this? Audrey, do you want to come in again? And
Sure. So thank you very much. I think that we need to have these conversations about ethics and redraw the boundaries. And I know it's a bit of a statement, but reevaluate and redraw the boundaries in terms to conform to our realities. You see, African realities are different from Western realities. The ethical canons from Western realities. That's not to say that we should not subscribe to those realities, but we have to say, is it going to be effective if we, for example, insist on certain practices to achieve results? And if not, then what are the limits? What limits should we be drawing? Let's say, for example, privacy, people's privacy. We know that you should not infringe on people's privacy. So under what situation should we be saying it is okay to infringe on the privacy of a politician who is engaged in wrongdoing, perhaps in their bedroom somewhere, while preaching to us, that we shouldn't do that, or proposing to have laws that will infringe on people's rights whilst they are doing the same thing. So is that then allowed, for example, to secretly take this person rather than reveal who you are? One of the ethical canons that Anas problematizes is his collaboration with the state. And I think that's a very interesting one. You see, because journalism is supposed to be independent. However, when you look at his practices, sometimes he actually has the state supporting him in unveiling corruption. He's done it in unveiling corruption in the cocoa sector, in the Temahabo, the president actually enlisted his help in uncovering and showing the evidence. in a way that state institutions responsible for corruption have not done. Is that allowed in our context? We would argue that, of course, because the state collaborates with journalists all the time. When you take journalists on a trip outside for them to cover what the president is saying, it is a form of collaboration. And that if in the end it results in the public interest, then we shouldn't insist on those fine distinctions, especially because it's so expensive and there's very little investment. I don't know whether we'll have time to talk about it, but we are not investing.
We have to make it quick. We have to make it choppy. We have only 1 hour. We have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take like 1 minute now so that we can have an audience response. Yeah. But thank you so very much. Dr. James, do you want to jump in on this? How the accountability of the journalist himself? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to make a statement, just take a quote from the good books that says, it points to public perception. That says we must ensure in all we do that we must ensure that the perception that the public holds of us is what the public is supposed to have for us to have that level of confidence. So take for example now, you have journalists in a media institution, you have a media management that the institution is run and managed by proper management, but they are not accountable. They don't pay journalists well. When you ask them to pay taxes, they don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to be accountable. We have all of these problems within our media institutions. That's why when journalists do not feel, they don't have the kind of satisfaction that they need to have for them to be able to practice well. I'm not saying that if journalists are not paid well, they are supposed to be unprofessional. That is not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that media institutions in themselves have to ensure that they treat journalists well, individual journalists well. Media managers have to be able to pay their journalists well. And for example, in Sierra Leone, we are having, the other day we were talking about donations that we have. The last time the government donated some implements to journalists. They were fasting Muslim journalists. They gave them some implements. And so the question came up as to whether SLAJ was supposed to accept those things. Because they were saying, how can journalists accept rice, accept oil, accept tomatoes from the government? So these are things we're looking at. If you're running a community radio station and a politician comes and gives a donation, how do you go about it to ensure that you maintain that level of confidence in the eyes of the public? So these are some of the things that we've been fighting with in the profession.
Okay. So please let me quickly run through Liberia and Gambia so we can at least have 5 minutes of, so thank you very much, Willette. That was fantastic. From
the Gambia, my take on this is,
right.
when we look at this question of ethics, is really very dicey.
Make it like 1 minute. We'll just knock it down. Yeah.
Yes, I was saying that the question of ethics is very dicey because you look at the good of the society and then you look at your own responsibility as an individual journalist. So when you look at the values of the society, you don't want to, you know what you're supposed to do as a journalist, but at the same time, you know the values, because here in the Gambia, there are strong religious values. So you see a journalist who doesn't want to violate all these strong religious values and everything. So even at CNN as an organization that is well respected, we see the way they handle this issue of ethics. So I believe that the conversation on ethics is something that still has to continue, because we see CNN at times does a lot of harm to individuals through their content. So I I just believe that for the individual journalist, you think of holistic development, which means that you must think of the development of the individual and think of development of the society. And you have to rightly place yourself, between these two to ensure that you satisfy your own conscience as a person.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adekunie. So let me then end this with Professor Togar. Will you just give me one sentence so that I can go to the audience a little bit? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the issue of ethics cannot be undercut. Ethics is everything. In every culture, in every workplace, ethics for me is everything. Whether you are paid well, I've heard journalists talk about engaging in unethical behaviors because they're not paid well and so forth. And I always tell them it's not a justification for unethical behavior. But we know that you cannot talk about, or you cannot hold people to high ethical standards without looking at certain factors. Of course, we do agree, but I think the issue of ethics is everything to the profession. It is important that public perception of the media remains high. People perceive the media as being independent and accountable. Other than that, I think the media will lose its relevance, and that's not what we want in any given society. So the issue of ethics should be taken very, very seriously at all times.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Togar. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open the floor for you guys to be able to fire one or two questions, and our time is really well spent. Is there any question here? I can't see any question. Okay. Sora, are you there? Are you asking a question? We can't hear you. Sorry. I mean, I can't at least. You're muted. Okay, go ahead. Quickly. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Mohamed Jawad Nyali. I'm from Sierra Leone. I'm asking a question about financing the media. At a time like this, when the global pandemic has hit the world, more media houses are in desperate financial situation. And so can African governments give subventions to the media? And if they can, what are some of the ethical dilemmas that we should consider while accepting subventions to ensure that we keep our media houses, the media in itself in Africa, strong, vibrant, and still independent in the question of receiving those subventions?
So who wants to jump in with just 1 minute answer? I mean, it's
it's such an important question. I think, yes, morally, government ought to support the media to survive, but we need to have arrangements that insulate the media from governmental control, even though government will be giving the money. And so I think that's what we need to consider. What's a good model, a good arrangement to make sure that, there's some perhaps committee in place that makes sure that it's fair and not subject to partisanship. Thank you.
Professor Togar, you to make one last point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, quickly, please. Yeah.
So I'm always very skeptical of government support to the media. I think the way I would like to see government support the media is to create the environment for the media to support itself. So regime, for example, of the advertising industry to ensure that the media gets advertisements and so forth. But direct support to the media, I'm usually very skeptical. Yes, I don't entirely rule it out, but I'm usually very skeptical because I subscribe to this. I believe in the law of reciprocity. That when someone does a favor for you, as humans, we are usually always inclined to pay back. So I'm very skeptical of that. So direct support from government to media is something I really would not support.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Sorry, please.
Can I just come in?
Okay, I'll give you guys 1 minute because
Okay.
we really have only 1 minute.
Yes,
So,
because I know where that question is coming.
Okay.
I know where that question is coming from. It's coming from a media that is poor in Sierra Leone. There's something we call media poverty in Sierra Leone, where you have media institutions cannot take care of themselves. Even the Sierra Leone Institution of Journalists relies on support, external support. And in Sierra Leone, we see the government has started giving subvention to the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists. But I don't think that I don't buy that idea. I don't want that kind of situation if I were to make the decision, because I think that media institutions must have what we call add-on businesses. If you are going to be established as a proper entity, you must have an add-on business, because look at the literate population in Sierra Leone. They are unable, I mean, you cannot survive with sales, newspaper sales. You cannot survive with advertising here in Sierra Leone, because there's a lack, we don't have an advertising culture in Sierra Leone. So what media is supposed to do is to ensure that they have, other businesses that can cushion, the effect, so that at the end of the day, they will not rely on government. And one disadvantage of relying on government for support is, if government does not come through for you, what do? You are reliant on government, and government does not come through, because that situation will happen.
Okay, let me take just a few seconds from Dr. Adekunie, and then we close the house. So
yes, my suggestion, somehow is in line with what she was saying, that products, every media organization must create products that can help them to generate funds, including even seeking for writing proposals and seeking for funds from external, grants from external sources. So they have to be very innovative, have creative in coming up with products that can help them to generate funds.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is an ongoing discussion. I'm so sorry. There's no way we can.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay,
Sure.
we have one more question, and we can give you 5 minutes. So,
thank you. Come up? Okay. Sure. Okay. Thank
Because
you,
we're pressed for time, I'll do this very briefly. I am Fatoumata Cham from the Gambia. Now, Dr. Adekunie will actually agree with me that there isn't, too much of investigative journalism that is happening back home. It is happening at a very meager, scale. Now, we have just one media house that is involved in large-scale investigations, and it is the Malagan, which is actually very new. Now, even with Malagan, they're actually very frustrated, because when you use your resources to do investigative stories and you reveal large-scale corruption and so on, not much happens. The government usually pays a deaf ear and so on. Now, our job as journalists is to make sure that we expose the ills when it comes to human rights violations and corruptions and all that. But then what is the impact, really? What do you think can be done, in your respective opinions, to make sure that the journalism we do really has impact back home? Thank you very much.
Okay. Impact. So I'll give each of our distinguished speakers 1 minute to speak about impact. How do we make impact?
Yeah. I'll just,
Audrey,
it's a very simple issue for me, is invest resources in investigative journalism and invest in training. One of the things we haven't had time to really talk about is training, and the kinds of training, both formally in the classroom as well as on the job, for journalists to be able to ply their trade, and also the networks that investigative journalism needs to forge in order to protect them. It can be very dangerous business if we want to do investigative journalism. It raises issues of safety, but it also raises issues of resources and training. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Please, can I come in, because the question is, investigative journalists are not making impact because government.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, those in power don't respond, even when they bring out these issues. I think that was what she was saying, that the government is not responsive as far as the issues that they come up with is concerned. I think it's because there is lack of media engagement with government. Because if the media in the Gambia will engage more, people, the actors in government, then I believe that they know that they have to be accountable, because questions will be put to them and they have to provide answers to those questions in the public glare. So more of engagement with people in power will help to achieve impacts.
Okay.
But I think that's very optimistic and not realistic. The fact is that accountable investigative journalism often exposes those in power. And so journalists have to come out with a way to make sure that those in power don't get away with it. I mean, again, I come back to Anas, who says he's interested in naming, shaming, and jailing. So he doesn't only live his journalism in a space of objectivity, he makes sure that he follows it through and exposes it in such a way that whether you are in power or not, you have no choice. You are shamed to do something about it. Otherwise, people in power are not interested. Our institutions are not interested in going the extra mile to take up what evidence is revealed in investigative journalism.
Okay, I would like to go. Willette, will you want to? We have this grace of 6 minutes to go. So I want to quickly get your thoughts before I go to Professor Togar.
I think we need to have a situation. Well, I'm talking from Sierra Leone perspective. In Sierra Leone, when you look at the media, look at what we publish, you find out that we publish most of hard and soft news stories, and we do not concentrate on investigative journalism. So there is no impact at all. And I think what we need to do is to come together. I think conglomeration of media institutions, because we know that investigative journalism is not cheap. So the way we will be able to achieve impact is to come together to investigate issues. I think that is what we need in Sierra Leone. We just have individuals who investigate little stories here and there, just like that. But the way we will have impact is when we have institutions coming together, like we have, like what you have in Nigeria, an investigative journalism institution. We come together, we investigate serious issues. I mean, there are lots of issues that we can investigate, and I think that will create impact. And when the government see that institutions have come together and they are working in that direction, I think it's something they should be scared about.
All right, thanks, Professor Togar. I'll give you the last word on this.
Investigative journalism is also still new here in Liberia. There is not much investigative journalism being done here. And I think it's also because it's actually expensive in terms of time and resources. But to the question of impact, I think investigative journalism can make impact. Of course, you don't expect, especially in the context of Africa, or maybe the context of Liberia, you don't expect duty bearers, a government to pay heed to some of the things that investigative journalists will uncover. But I think it also gets worse when you have a passive society. Society has become passive, especially in Liberia here. So what do I mean? When journalists uncover wrongdoing, people politicize it. The environment is so politicized, so polarized. So these journalists cannot do more than raise these issues, bring them to public attention. It's now left to the public. It's about empowering the public to act. So if the public becomes so passive to the extent that nothing is done, then of course gives government the opportunity to just water it down. But I think passion is going to help. A strong desire to maintain self-integrity is going to help. So I would just end by saying, don't give up. Keep doing what you do. Impact is going to be felt in time.
Thank you so very much. This is a dream team of a panel. I will say myself that I've gained far more than I could have imagined when we started out, and I'm sure that I speak also for the audience in thanking you, Professor Gadzekpo. You've been in the front line, and actually, she's also on the board of the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism, and this is something that it's a life work for you. So thank you so very much. In our last trip across West Africa, we have special honor of meeting Dr. James and Dr. Togar, who are really doing massive heavy lifting in very difficult terrain, and we're so appreciative that you are here again today to lend your thoughts to us. A good friend and old schoolmates, Dr. Adekunie It's such an honor and a great pleasure that, we are meeting on this platform again. And thank you so very much for, I think Sora will be doing, I hope I'm not taking your job, Sora.
Not at all.
Okay, good. Thank you so very much.
Okay, so just before you go, we'd like to say thank you for that interesting session. Thank you for highlighting so much around the ethics of journalism in the sub-region. It is obvious that most of the issues are similar in the sub-region. Thank you so much once again. I would like to say Medase to our Ghanaian speaker, Jerege to our Gambian speaker, and of course, yeah, to our Liberian speaker, which literally translates to thank you. So thank you so much, everyone. We're going to go on to the next session. I will be joining Velwova. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.